Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Hall of Famer Bob Berry ruled Milwaukee's airwaves in the 60s and 70s. He spoke with countless musicians and celebrities over the years. Bob collected remarkable recordings of these encounters, which he's now sharing with the public. Here's Bob.
Ray Scott was best known for his play-by-play broadcasts of the Green Bay Packers, along with Tony Canadeo. He was one of my all-time favorite sports announcers. With the CBS broadcast team, he worked with Pat Summerall. He called the 1965 World Series on NBC television with Vin Scully. He also called the Milwaukee Brewers telecast in 1976 and 77. In this podcast, he'll talk about the Packers. He'll give his thoughts on a book called Out of Their League by former St. Louis Cardinals linebacker Dave Meggyesy. A very controversial book, badmouthing pro football. In the book, he writes that pro football is a fraud, racist, with playoffs and drug abuse, and incredible violence. Ray Scott is in the Pro Football and Packers Hall of Fame. He was ranked 28th in the list of the top 50 sportscasters of all time.
That's Bob Berry on the air this morning with super sportscaster Ray Scott. And I say super because he was the voice, of course, of the Green Bay Packers for over a decade, and right now heads one of the CBS swing crews covering major NFL games every week. Virtually covered every major college football bowl game, 3 national golf championships, 7 national football league championships, Big Ten football, and I could go on and on. Ray, it's nice to have you on the air this morning.
Thank you, Bob. Good to be back in Milwaukee. Like home, second home.
Yeah, listen, we really miss you on those Green Bay broadcasts, and I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you. I miss the Packers in many, many ways, Bob.
What was your greatest thrill out of all these things I just mentioned? Gee, I imagine it's pretty hard to pinpoint one, but...
I put, I think, maybe 2 games together, I think, Bob. I think the home-and-home series, as it were, between the Cowboys and the Packers, the one that concluded the 1966 regular season in Dallas, when the Cowboys had the ball and a chance to tie and couldn't in the closing moments. And then, of course, the famous Sub-Zero game in Green Bay the following year, when it was almost as if a scriptwriter had taken over. In Dallas the year before, the field was good, the crowd was pro-Dallas, the Packers were ahead, and Dallas had the ball. And now, the next year, the fans are pro-Green Bay, the weather is abominable, and the Packers were behind, and the Packers had the ball. I think if someone had written that, he probably would have been fired. I put those 2 games together as thrilling, emotional, dramatic, just about every adjective that guys like us use in our business, Bob, to describe a game. Looking back on it now, I guess it's pretty obvious with each passing day that any of us who were privileged to be identified with the Packers over those years when Vince Lombardi coached there, that we were, in effect, watching what is now being recognized as an era in professional football. It was interesting. It was dramatic, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
You had to know Vince Lombardi quite well, right?
I think so.
Can you tell us a little bit about Vince, knowing him personally?
Oh, golly. I've been asked many times, Bob, how do you describe Vince Lombardi? And it's very difficult. You think of a lot of words, and many of which are almost contradictory. Demanding, egotistical, tough, unrelenting, autocratic, kind, generous, religious, thoughtful, all these words. He was not an easy man to describe, not really an easy man to learn to know, one I admired very, very much. All in all, looking back, I feel that, and both of them are gone now, Vince Lombardi and the late Branch Rickey Sr., to me, are the 2 men who made perhaps the greatest impression on me of all of those men that I have learned to know over these years, who had a big part in their particular sport. Branch Rickey in baseball and Vince Lombardi in football. And I don't think it's a coincidence, really, that it's proper to say that each would have been a success at almost anything. They were, that's the kind of people they were.
Well, ever since Vince left the Packers to go to Washington, it's been rough for Phil Bankston to, the certain magic that Vince Lombardi had, Phil Bankston doesn't have, and of course he's had a rough time with the team too. What do you see in his future? Have you heard anything about Bankston leaving the coaching scene after this season?
Bob, I haven't heard a thing. Always, of course, people talk when a team doesn't do as well as their followers would like to have them do. But I couldn't imagine a more difficult thing than Phil following Vince at Green Bay, or for that matter, Bill Austin following Vince in Washington. What do you do for an encore? How do you follow Vince Lombardi? Coaching a team that played in 2 Super Bowls, the first 2, and won them both. What do you do to top that? And if you do less than equal it, there are many who consider you have failed. Well, this is very difficult for me to believe. I just hope, because of my long association with the Packers, the friends that I made there, and I value my friendship with Phil Benson. I just wish him nothing but the very best. The Packers, like many teams, have been really victimized with key injuries. And I'm almost of the opinion now that the team that wins everything this year is going to be the team with the most healthy key performers. That's what it's really about boiled down to.
I bet you wish you could have been in Green Bay last Sunday.
Oh, boy. Gee, when I heard about the outcome of that.
What a finish.
It's just tremendous. And then I saw the highlights of it, And what a thrill to see Bart do what he does so very well, which is perform under pressure. Boy, he's one of my all-time favorites, Bob. And one of the great careers in all of sports.
We've been talking about the good side of football. Have you had an opportunity to read Dave Meggyesy's book?
I would only read it, I don't know, maybe out of curiosity, but I get a little bit upset at these people who like to, in effect, trade gains financially by talking about what they consider to be the seamy side of a sport that, in this case, I think did pretty well by this young man. And I don't think, from what I understand, he has written about, I don't think that this makes him any more of a man. Number one, if he did the things that he did or agreed to do the things that I understand he agreed to do, he doesn't measure up to me as an outstanding young man to now, but like a kiss and tell thing, Bob? I measure a Dave Meggyesy against somebody like Bart Starr. Why, it's a joke. They're not in the same league.
Well,
to me, Bart Starr represents the true professional. And to me, Dave Meggyesy never was a true professional. I find it a little bit difficult to contain myself and be polite in talking about people like this.
Do you go back to your home now in Arizona for a few days, or?
Well, actually, I was in Milwaukee to speak to the advertising club, Bob, and then I have some chores in Minneapolis to do some commercials, frankly. Visit a son of mine who lives there, visit with my brother who works there in television, and then I go on to Kansas City, where Pat Summerall and I will be this weekend to televise the St. Louis-Kansas City game on national television Sunday afternoon. And then, I guess about 1 o'clock Monday morning, I'll get back to the airport in Phoenix.
Very good. Now, that weather's got to be a lot different than ours.
A little different.
Thank you very much, Ray, and we'll certainly be listening for you in those future broadcasts.
Bob, you're very kind, and thank you.
The Packers have defeated the Cleveland Browns for the championship of the league. And Vince Lombardi is being carried from the field.
Bob Berry.
Thank you for listening to Bob Berry's Unearthed Interviews. Be sure to subscribe and rate our podcast on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find all the episodes at WisconsinBroadcastingMuseum.org. Check out Bob Berry's book, Rock and Roll Radio Milwaukee. Book sale proceeds support Angels Kids Fund and Donate Life Wisconsin. The preceding program was made possible by a generous contribution from Terry Vaughn.